Hi, Donald here with another tips and tricks. And this tips and tricks is on abilities versus capabilities. And the defining thing there is that abilities are human, capabilities are come from an object. So in this case, I'm going to go with abilities of the kayaker or the angler and the capabilities of the kayak. Okay? A good example of this, or a common example of this for capabilities versus abilities, is I hear a question that comes up a lot from beginning kayak fishermen or kayak anglers, or even kayak anglers that have been in it for a while. And they find a kayak, and one of their first questions is, can I stand up in that kayak? That's a question that is more towards your abilities than the capability of the kayak. To give you an idea, I can stand up in this kayak, I can stand up in that kayak, and I can even stand up in the splashback. And it's not meant to, the capabilities of that kayak are far less to be able to be stood up in. It's not designed for standing. These are designed for standing. Okay? So the design of the kayak has the capability to be stood in or stood up in. But your ability to stand up is something that you have to physically figure out. Okay, so if you have equilibrium or balance issues, you may have to look at a kayak that is wider and more stable and have to sacrifice something like paddability or performance to get that, perhaps. Now, if you have a lot of balance and a lot of stability and a lot of natural you stand on one foot, hop around, whatever, right? If you have a natural, a massive amount of natural ability to balance, then you could probably stand up and you have the ability to stand up in more kayaks. Not every kayak, because the kayak has to have the capability to be stood in. An example of that is a sea kayak. Very difficult to stand up in a sea kayak, even if you have supreme balance and equilibrium issues or equilibrium abilities. Okay, some kayaks don't have the capability to do some things in. So when you look at a kayak and your first question is, can I stand in that kayak? That's a question of your abilities. Okay, the question should be more looked upon about the width of that kayak, the whole design of that kayak, especially the bottom, how stable that kayak is, so that it gives you a capability for you to stand in. But your ability to stand comes from you. That's a human factor, a physical factor that you have to work on. Okay, other things are capabilities and abilities. Okay, and that's just a big one that I hear all the time. Another one is, how fast is that kayak? How fast a kayak is depends on your ability to how fast you can paddle. Now, yes, there are differences in kayaks as far as speed because of the way that the hull is designed. They are a little faster. But to ask how fast a kayak gets, it's your maximum miles per hour is dependent upon how fast your ability is to paddle that kayak. It is not a capability of the kayak to go X miles per hour. It is your ability to put that kayak at its maximum speed. Now, that maximum speed depends on your paddle stroke, your paddle technique, the paddle length, how big the blade is. All those have factors, right? The weight, how you've got the weight distributed. So there really isn't a simple, easy answer for that question of how fast is that kayak. It can be faster or slower than some other kayaks. And that's because of the hull design, the kayak design, the width, the bottom, the weight, distribution, a lot of different things. Shorter kayak, longer kayaks, skinnier kayaks, wider kayaks, V-shape, pontoon shape, all that makes a difference on the speed ability, right? Or the speed capability, I'm sorry. Now, the speed ability is all up to you, okay? So that is a difference between ability and capability. Capability is what the kayak has. Ability is what you have as a kayaker or an angler, right? Same thing when you're looking at fishing rods, right? I mean, you very rarely do you see a question of, can that rod cast under a dock? Sure it can. The rod has the capability. Whether you have the ability to cast that lure underneath that dock is all up to you, right? The rod has design features that can allow that, but your ability and your skill is what is able to allow you to do that. Same in kayaking, okay? If you are looking at it as a broad picture of, if I can stand. I don't know if you can stand in this kayak or not, okay? That depends on your ability. It has the capability of being stood up in. This particular one, this is the CK1 Venture from Crescent Kayaks. It's a very stable kayak. It's got wide enough feet that if you can get just over your shoulder width apart, it's a very stable kayak to stand up and sit down in. Now, that doesn't say you can stand up in it, or everyone out there, every paddler on the planet can stand up in it. Again, that comes down to your abilities versus the kayak capabilities, okay? That is it for this tips and tricks on abilities versus capabilities. This is Donald. Check out our tips and tricks every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Central, right here on the Floating Feathers Kayak Fly Fishing channel. Thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe below. If you have any questions or comments, leave those below as well. Until next time, safe paddles, tight lines.